Hello and welcome to the next in the series of our Meet the Employer webinars, bringing you exclusive access to inside information from a wide range of employers. This series is run in partnership with Graduate Recruitment Bureau, the UK's leading recruitment service for entry-level careers. Thank you very much for joining us today. I'm Katie Hildyard, your host for the series, and I'm delighted to be joined by two members of the Early Careers and Talent Acquisition team at Avanade, the world's leading digital innovator. We've got Izzy Fernandez, who's the UK and Ireland Early Careers Lead, and Risha Ranawat, who's Head of UK and Ireland Talent Acquisition. Hi to you, ladies.
Hi, Katie.
Coming up, both Izzy and Risha will be sharing their top takeaway tips to help you get ahead of the curve, so make sure you stay tuned for those. And also, if you have a question you'd like us to answer, pop it in the chat box and we'll do our best to answer it a little later on. Before we get started, I've got some very quick housekeeping. The webinar should last no longer than 25 minutes, and if you experience any technical difficulties, don't worry, because a copy of the recording will be made available on the Avanade profile in your online career platform. Now, this slide gives you an idea of the employers who have already taken part in the series, and we've got a growing number confirmed for the next few weeks and months. All those details can be found in your online platform. Now, I've been fortunate enough to have a really good chat with Izzy and Risha, and it certainly sounds like Avanade is a super place to start your career. Izzy, I think it'd be really great for any students that may have not heard of Avanade before, if you can introduce us to Avanade.
Yes, Katie, of course, thank you. So Avanade was co-created in 2000 by Accenture and Microsoft. So we are actually a global IT consultancy who specialise in Microsoft technologies. Now, I think what's quite special about Avanade is at Avanade, business and technology consulting, it doesn't just have to be your career, it can really be your passion as well. So more than just working with the latest Microsoft innovations, which is kind of bread and butter, what a lot of our consultants do in different areas, and those I can tell you a little bit more about in a second. It means you're really using technology to solve business problems and in ways that can make a real difference to your clients and those you're working with. So we work across a number of different client sectors. So that might be in finance, that might be in resources, so that's sort of oil and gas, in products, so that's thinking about kind of supermarket chains, that might be in the public sector, or that might be more in the sort of communication and media and telecom space as well. We have different strands of the business where different of our consultants sit. So some of those might include infrastructure, security, software engineering, business analysis, advisory. So they're sort of the more sort of management consultant style of work, analytics and delivery. And I think the other thing to flag is that obviously as a consultant, there's a lot of scope for traveling, and so that's something that's a really sort of big part of who Avanade are and the business model as well, though obviously a little less at the moment given everyone's working from home.
Yeah, sure. No, that's really useful and gives a really interesting insight actually into what sounds like a really interesting business. Risha, I know when we spoke, you talked about how Avanade prides itself on its diverse community and a culture that welcomes every individual. It'd be so interesting to learn more about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's definitely not only one area that we're very proud about as an organization, it's almost just ingrained within how we operate. So what you'll find at Avanade is that pretty much we support diversity across in our day-to-day working, in how we operate as a business, and you know how a key part of that is the talent we acquire to come into the company. We have a number of what we call employee resource groups that are, some of which are very specifically work towards gender. So you know, as females in IT, they help you through leadership, whether it's a leadership program, whether it's just mentoring, but also we have other employee resource groups which are genuinely in place to educate one another and then teach one another to sort of respect the diverse community that we're made up of in the world, and then how we kind of incorporate that within the organization. So whether it's something as important as celebrating different festivals, or taking up very key aspects around the BAME community as well. So we are very dedicated to those efforts, and as I said earlier, it's something that is ingrained within the organization. There are a number of groups that currently operate, and then when it comes to our own hiring, joining Avanade, we have very strong metrics that we push our teams through, enable us to sort of ensure that we are hiring very fairly and equally, and acquiring talent not only in diverse skill set, but also in thoughts, in gender, in culturally diverse as well. So we have trainings that people go through, so they understand the importance of why it means so much to Avanade. They also are almost educated as why this is important, because we don't take it for granted, the impact and the positivity of a diverse work environment.
No, and I think it's really interesting as well, because from what you're saying, it clearly sounds like it's fully embedded into the organisation. This isn't some standalone element. Actually, no. you live and breathe it, and it translates right the way through everything that the company does.
Absolutely. And I think whilst we recognise it internally, we have been recognised in the marketplace for these efforts as well. Just last year, we won Employer of the Year at Women in Tech Awards. I hope I've got that right. We were
Women in Tech,
and it was a moment of great pride for us, because I think it's quite important that for us it's a very important thing, but the fact that we got recognized for it amongst a lot of our peer groups meant that we are definitely in the right direction. But we do recognize we still have a very long way to go, and I'm quite confident that it'll only become a more and more diverse organization next years to come.
That's really positive, and I'm sure the students listening in today will agree that actually an organisation that's putting that front and centre is actually really appealing and really important right now as well. In terms of the person, Izzy, it would be great to get a sense from you in terms of what type of person you think would excel at Avanade.
Yeah, absolutely. So to start, at Avanade, we're guided in everything we do by sort of 5 core values. So that's something that's really global, and we think about changing things better, innovating with passion and purpose, delivering with excellence, believing everyone counts, and acting with integrity and respect. And I know a lot of companies have mission statements like that, and a lot of that feeds into what Risha just said about the importance of kind of diversity and company culture to us as an organization. What does this mean in terms of who excels at Avanade? I think that a yes person is something I always like to start with. So someone that does say yes to opportunities, is really passionate and ready to get stuck in on any kind of client projects that they're doing, or any internal projects that they're doing, and is just keen to kind of show an interest and to learn. I would say that Avanade has quite an entrepreneurial spirit. So we're a big global organization, yes, and it feels like that, and it feels like, the sort of organized chaos in a way, but it's also really fantastic that I think everyone really has the chance to be themselves. And I think that people who really show themselves through their passion and by delivering with excellence, but by sort of being themselves at Avanade, do really well. I think the other thing is learning and development is really important. The company as a whole puts a lot of focus on training. Everyone in the company has a career advisor, and I think that comes as a really important part of the Avanade fabric, which is about everyone's personal career development and understanding where they want to be with their career, that everyone in the whole company has a career advisor right up to the CEO. So, even the CEO will have advisees that report straight into them. So I think that's something that's quite special about the sort of who can do well at Avanade, because I suppose the answer is really anyone can do well at Avanade, but it is about having that kind of really positive attitude and using those good people around you to help you, but also being one of those good people yourself.
I think I want to, first of all, I have to admit, Izzy's definitely the best person to answer this question, and I think I need to introduce the sort of points that Izzy herself is a really good example, and I know this is not meant to be like mutual admiration club here. However, it's for a very straightforward reason. So for those, I mean, I guess many of you don't know Izzy's background, so let me tell you a little bit about Izzy. Izzy was a business consultant. She joined Avanade, I think, about maybe just under 2 years ago. But she joined the business side, so she joined the consulting part of the business. Obviously, you know, I'm sure there was she loved what she was doing there. And then around 6 to 8 months ago, Izzy reached out to myself and I think another colleague of mine to ask to work in TA. And however, before that, she was quite an active participant in a lot of activities which were, sorry, I shouldn't be using abbreviation, talent acquisition is TA. So Izzy was already quite a key member from the business, just supporting us through things like career fairs and, you know, anything and everything that we reached out to business for. Izzy was always there. So, you know, obviously, whilst that's great for us, and I have to admit, we get a lot of support from the business at Avanade. But so, you know, for us, so the fact that she actually came out, it was not her most comfortable place. I don't think talent acquisition is for everybody, and it is, especially somebody who has no experience in it. She's come in with these ideas and actually has pushed her way through, you know, in a way that I had to go and get approvals to get Izzy on the team. So it's all thanks to her resilience, the fact that she kept pushing for it in the right way, and it was something she was quite keen to do. You know, and I take actually, you know, all the credit of everything great happening in early years actually is all Izzy.
That's brilliant. And I think, I mean, there's loads of great stuff that you've just covered there. I think what's also particularly interesting, especially if you've got students who are particularly entrepreneurial, is actually not ruling out a large organisation, you know, because there can sometimes be this perception that small companies are the only ones really where you can be entrepreneurial. So I think quashing that perception is also really valid for people that are looking at their career options.
Yeah, and I think that's something I definitely learned having come into Avanade and then kind of quite quickly realizing that there's a lot to get involved with. I think the other thing I would say to even myself 2 years ago is that you can be doing one role and you really enjoy it, but I suppose the beauty of a slightly bigger company is that you have exposure to other business areas that you didn't even know about. So I personally had never ever thought about a career in talent acquisition, and had I not been in a company like Avanade and there hadn't been a big talent acquisition team, then actually I wouldn't have had the visibility of that type of work, and I would never have known that that might be something that I'd go on to love and do. So I think actually, especially at that level, if you're someone that you're not quite sure what you want to do, don't necessarily think about going into a big organization, something that's going to stop you from, you know, I suppose, like browsing in terms of where you want to be. It's just about kind of, like I said, saying yes to every opportunity and making sure you're doing whatever you've been tasked to do at that specific time well, as you decide where you want to be aiming.
Sure. Great. Yeah, really useful. Okay, great. Now, which leads me on quite nicely to what kind of opportunities do you have at Avanade? Izzy, perhaps you're best placed to answer this one.
Yeah, of course. So at the moment, we've done our hiring for our next fiscal, but our fiscals actually start in September. So when I say fiscal, I kind of just mean like the financial year. So our next recruitment will likely be for our financial year 22, but that will be next September. So effectively a year from now, so 2021. And we tend to look to recruit around January or February time. And we will kind of decide upon the numbers that we're looking to recruit for as we're getting into that kind of planning stage for our hiring for that financial year. So we offer a graduate scheme, and then we also offer an apprentice scheme as well, that we tend to recruit for at a slightly different time, just so that they're not overlapping in terms of joining us. So that might be more of a sort of March type start date, and possibly therefore a kind of December recruitment time. Now, I suppose the thing there is that those apprenticeships are level 3 and 4. So if anyone is kind of interested in that type of approach, then that's one to know. And those areas tend to be the quite specifically technical areas that you would land in at first as an apprentice. So, you know, the software engineering, infrastructure, security, kind of business analysis, analytics. As a graduate, you're very likely to end up, if you want to, pursuing one of those career options as well. But at kind of apprentice graduate phase, what we do make sure is that you're much more brought into a kind of holistic group and program. And I suppose as a part of that, there's the kind of onboarding into that whole group that goes on. At the moment, that's all remote. We call it Go Orange. Our company colour is orange. So I suppose a big part of that is, you know, you don't actually have to wear orange all of the time. You can see neither Risha or I are. In fact, we've really gone for Christmas colours. But yeah, no, I think that there's the kind of whole Go Orange piece where you train graduates and apprentices and anyone entering the company. And then we have a really, like I said, sort of structured training program for any of our early talent coming through the door, to make sure that you are really able to kind of learn as much as you can as soon as you're with us at Avanade.
Now, I'm just conscious of time. What we will do, I've just been keeping a track of questions that have come in via the chat box. So I'll do my best, or we'll do our best rather, to answer as many as we can quickly. Thank you very much to the students that have submitted a question. First one is, how does your recruitment process work? Who'd like to answer that?
I can take that.
Yeah.
So I'll predominantly cover it from an early years perspective, because it can be slightly different from experienced hire. So in the early years side, the applications will open up for, as you described, either our graduate opportunities or the apprentice program. And typically the applications are, well, the role will be open on our careers website, which then enables you to apply via what we call our application tracking system. There are a few questions there that, you know, we expect people to be able to answer. There are some sort of prerequisite screening questions as well for us to kind of get to know you a little bit better. Once those applications are received, they are then reviewed by Izzy and her team at our end. And the first batch of successful applicants are then given what we call a talent acquisition screening call. This call can be up to 45 minutes, about 30 to 45 minutes, and it's a fact-finding call. I usually tell them that's fact-finding call. So just to understand, you know, what is it that, what do you like as a person? What are you doing? What are you studying? And we have some key questions we have to get through. Following that, and the next shortlist is then prepared for our assessment day. So our assessment day is typically up to 4 to 5 hours. In pre-COVID times, is in our office in Cannon Street, you know, one we are very proud of. So, you know, we like to bring everybody in there. And there are sort of about 3 or 4 types of activities that happen in the day, with a group discussion, a bit of a fun activity, and then some interviews. But then we also show the individuals around our office and make them meet some key people, depending if they're in the office or not. So that typically ends the day, and at the end of which we collaborate. Now, that in most cases would be the end of the process. However, what we found quite helpful in the last, I guess, 2 intakes, both across apprentices and graduates, is candidates who have been successful from the assessment day, we do bring them back in for another conversation with what we would sort of say the head of the business for that area that they're potentially going to join. So as an example, if you're a graduate who's going to join our infrastructure team, and for some reason the infrastructure lead wasn't around on the day because of availability, we'll then just set some time, and that conversation is is quite good because it enables the candidate, the applicant, to understand exactly what they're going to get up to doing. Plus, the assessment day itself can be, it can be quite a lot to take in. And then really so it's a one-on-one conversation. Now, I do want to say it's not over till it's over. So as an applicant, you must treat it as an interview. But I will admit it's only the people who are successful will call them back. And unless we found, or you found, that there was too big a gap in what you thought you were going to do at Avanade, and based on your conversation, then we may revisit. But I honestly about that, and we've made our mind up that you are good to go. So yeah, and then that kind of wraps up the interview process. As I said, it's very similar for apprentices and graduates. The only difference is maybe a couple of things we may do within the process slightly differently. You then get a contract at the end of that, and in most cases there's a bit of a gap between receiving the contract and joining, and then we have lots of engagement activities to keep you involved, which includes speaking with typically your what we call career advisors, your mentors during that process. And even during coronavirus times, we've been able to engage really well with our sort of intake via robot building challenges and quizzes and whatnot. So yeah, so you will hear from Izzy, myself, through the gap. When I say gap, it's probably about 2 months in most cases, and sometimes it's shorter even. So that in essence is our process.
Brilliant. That's really detailed as well. And I think hopefully, and also to the students on the call, they can watch this back at any time. And I think just gaining insight into that process in that way is, I'm sure, incredibly helpful, especially when it comes to planning ahead. That's great. Thank you. Next question I've got is, considering the situation we're in, what advice would you give to help us as we navigate the world of work post-COVID?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. I think I'm going to go back to probably the point we made about what makes you successful at Avanade. I think that's maybe a bit of a repetition there, but I just being a little bit more open with your options in terms of, obviously everybody has a plan A, but really treating plan A, B, C, and D with equal importance. I think there is going to be, definitely there are more applicants than jobs in the market, but that in itself can be turned around into a bit of a positive experience. I know it's easier said than done, but understanding where the gaps are and just really treating the job hunt like a project. So the use of Excel and data, like where you've applied, is quite key. So that's one thing. And then secondly, I think it's really important to be visible. Thanks to social media and particularly LinkedIn, companies are constantly, having conversations as groups. So kind of just being out there, not just by way of a job seeker, but almost as an subject matter expert to be. So you could have some really good, strong opinions and good ones, and either way, is it good or bad, you should be an active participant on the various forums on social media, because you're being noticed, and obviously when you are following companies, even now companies are hosting a number of virtual events, whether they're webinars or they're, I don't know, like CV clinics. So just be there, be present. There's still a lot happening, even in light of COVID. So I think just being present, that initiative is probably it's so underrated, but I guess it's the most key thing right now for job seekers, and even more so because this is going to be your first job.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Brilliant. Right, I'm going to squeeze in one more before we wrap up with the takeaways. We've got one saying, I read on your website that Avanade places real value in the person and your time away from work to help you be your best self. How do you do this?
So I do a lot of work as a part of my early talent role with our corporate citizenship, and corporate citizenship or corporate social responsibility, as some on this call might know, it is, I think, a really important aspect of business and how business is presenting itself in this society. There's a lot on our website about that if anyone on this call is interested to hear more. What does this mean for us? We get 8 hours of volunteering time for all employees globally to use, and that is kind of counted time that you can put into your timesheet, and you can go and you can volunteer with your own communities, or it might be being part of a corporate citizenship charity initiative that's being run within the business. So we work with Young Enterprise, Prince's Trust, and other various charities as well. Now, since COVID, that has been uncapped. So what does that mean? That means really anyone in the business can be thinking, okay, this is really valuable to me. I'm going to go and use that time well. We have something in the diary called Feel Good Friday at 12 o'clock on a Friday. We all get a notification in our calendar that comes up, and it's basically a bit of a reminder that, you know, you can go and close your laptop and go outside and, you know, go and do something useful with that, you know, hour that you have been effectively given, and then use as your corporate citizenship volunteering time if you see fit. I think we've had some really cool examples of people in the company making masks for homeless shelters, and actually using their coding skills to help develop for charities and things like that, not as part of their client work, but actually as an amazing expert skill that they have on the side, which is really, really useful for a lot of charities and non-for-profits who have also been having to navigate this whole new crazy world of COVID.
So I guess, thank you for that. I guess in a similar way to this, to how committed the company is to inclusivity and diversity, the well-being element is also fully embedded within everything that you do and taken seriously as well, not seen as like a standalone, separate, one-off type activity.
Very much so. It's very ingrained in the company ethos. It's a big part of sort of who we are and what we do and how we go about all of the work that we do, be that with each other or with our clients.
Yeah, sure. Brilliant. Well, look, I'm really sorry, but we haven't got any more time for questions. What we do have time for, though, are some top takeaway tips before we go. So who wants to go first?
I can go first. I think, well, I guess I'm going to probably do sort of three takeaways from my perspective. I think, you know, I think there's no better time to invest in yourself than there is right now. And I know, and that's probably my my cue when I said with the level of, you know, there will be maybe a little bit longer to get that first job in this particular year, but that's the opportunity to then develop yourself and understand. So there's no better time to do that, and, you know, investing time in yourself. Yes, definitely, you know, becoming quite fearless in your approaches, whether it's a job hunting, but at the same time trying to stay very systematic how you're going about it. So when you are doing your follow-ups and follow through, you know exactly who you're talking to. Social media is brilliant because everybody's on there, and I think most people are really willing to help right now. So, you know, using that to its fullest potential. And yeah, really just sort of, you know, staying open to more than one opportunity, and thinking a little bit beyond that. Okay, well, you know, what I've studied, what I had my plans, but at the same time seeing how those plans can be incorporated within the organization. So not saying completely forget, you know, what you had planned to do. You know, I'm going to use the coding example again. You probably thought getting your first job as a software developer is not quite working out. You've been hired as a junior business analyst, for example, but then how can you actually make that work? So maybe have those conversations with the organization, that how easy is it to maneuver within departments and within talent communities or business units, because eventually that's my end goal. So I think those honest, open conversations, which will allow you to get that, you know, first opportunity, but at the same time you could still continue on the same path that you had kind of dreamt of. So that's from me.
And I think from me, it's something I said at the beginning, really, is say yes to everything. That doesn't mean, you know, commit to something you really don't want to do, but give everything a go and have a smile on your face about it. And I also think as part of that, don't be afraid of hearing no. And I think that comes into what we just said about being fearless. No doesn't mean never, and it doesn't mean you're bad. It doesn't mean you failed. It just means try again in a different way, but all the while keep smiling and keep saying yes. I think the other thing is ask questions, especially at your sort of early talent graduate level. Just learn from the people around you and be curious, even if you think, oh, I don't really want to necessarily end up working in this part of the organization, just learn about it, because all that context is always going to help you. And I also think asking questions of other people, industry experts, before you have a job is really, really important as well. So using LinkedIn to have a look at interesting job profiles. It's not going to hurt to send someone a really polite message to say, hey, I'm really interested in the look of your profile. Do you have 15 minutes for a virtual coffee? Now, you might never get to reply. Again, if there's a no there, it doesn't matter, but you've tried. And actually, that's how a lot of sort of mentor type relationships and networking relationships are built. And that's how a lot of them grow. And actually, that's again about just showing yourself as that sort of yes person. And I think the last thing really I'd say is just don't panic. So yes, everything's maybe a bit crazy right now. Yes, it's, you know, the job market is competitive, and yes, actually starting a new job as a graduate or as an apprentice in any situation, even before there was a global pandemic, was a big deal, but it really is okay. So I think sort of it sounds really silly, but don't panic and just kind of go with it, and keep thinking about where you want to be going, and you should be okay.
Brilliant. Well, look, there's lots there. I'll run through them ever so quickly before we wrap up. So to invest in yourself now, take that time to invest in yourself. Stay systematic and organised in your approach to job hunting. Staying open to opportunities, so things that you may not think are of interest or relevant to you or of interest immediately could well turn out to be something great. Saying yes to everything. Not being afraid, asking questions, and don't panic. I think really great advice there. So that's brilliant. Right, thank you so much to both of you for taking part in this webinar today. We certainly hope that all the students on the webinar found it insightful. As I mentioned before, this is part of our Meet the Employer webinar series. To find out about the others that we have taking place, all you'll need to do is go into your newsroom on this careers site, click the webinar tag, and you'll see the details of all the webinars that have taken place and the ones that we've got coming up as well. As ever, we'd love your feedback, so please just complete the very short survey that will pop up at the end of the session. And on behalf of all of us, thank you again for joining us today, and I certainly hope you can join us for a future webinar.